recording and Hello.
Hey, Bernie.
Hello.
Can you hear us, Bernie?
There we go. I don't know what was going on there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We're waiting for one more in-person attendee, and then we can get started. I think Julie's on her way.
Okay, I'm on 3rd Street. I'm pretty close, but
Okay.
I had a guy coming up from Tennessee today, and he was an hour late. I don't know if he got jacked up on Central Standard or whatever, but it always goes that way, doesn't it?
That's okay. Yeah, we'll get started in just a little bit.
Okay, well, I may see you here in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, but I'll stay on the phone.
Okay.
Are you guys upstairs or are you guys down in 100?
We're in our office, 224.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. There's Ann, I think. Maybe not. Okay, I'm down the parking lot, folks. I'm going to shut you down. There's Julie right behind you. Yep, we'll walk in together.
Dave, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you.
Oh, so you were just coming from Russell Road then?
Yeah.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah. From Franklin, I can go in 15 minutes.
Okay.
So I get a good tailwind.
I'm logged off the call.
Yep, you're logged off. So we've got Dave Schilling and Drew Myers
Oh,
on the call. And then, so yeah, thanks for everyone for coming to the ordinance review committee. I do have a slight revised agenda, just the topics that we wanted to discuss and go over at the end. But I wanted to, we can just go ahead and start with the first item under the agenda. I'll note that we'll try and wrap this up by about 5:30, just in case you want to go to the
It's
city.
next week.
Oh, it is, okay, okay, well,
You
anyways,
mentioned
we'll
that.
try and
Let's still try it
keep
anyway.
it, yeah, keep it at 5:30 if we can.
I'm-
Yeah, so we have two main agenda items, the plot plan revisions, which are technical fixes. And then one thing I want to go over with everyone, and then the CDO, I just keep bringing that back up. Hopefully get some guidance from the ordinance review committee, maybe talk about what's changed, and then, the next plan commission meeting, regular session, I'd like to just approach maybe contacting the consultants and getting them more updated and more involved. So I will pull up first item, which is the site plan review. So this did go through the county commissioners and did get approved. We haven't had any negative feedback yet from this, but we are just seeing that there's some little bit of fixes that we need to make sure that it's really clear. So one of them is the change from making sure that the scale drawings, there's three options. There's a certified site plan, certified plot plan, and then the plot plan. So instead of putting scaled plot plan or scaled drawing, we just want to call anything that's not certified just a plot plan, not certified. So we're going to make that change and just clarify that it's certified or plot plan. And then also down here is the next change. Also, when we were using this, which is the best time to check for any fixes, we found that there was an issue with the residential accessory structure. That's just the plot plan, non-certified, but we had in there a second sentence that said that they needed to have a boundary survey if they were less than 2.5 acres, or a deed of illustrative boundary, and they can't do that unless they get it certified. So that was a mistake, just to have these two boxes with this one. So what we did was we moved this down to the bottom. And so then just the first part of J is for both, which someone hypothetically could do using the Elevate GIS, show all of this. So that's moved to the bottom. And I had to title it CZ because we're out of letters. So for sites equal to greater than.
AA, but okay.
Yeah, AA, okay, yeah, I can change to AA. We were also wondering, as I moved this down to the bottom, a question for the group is, do you want me to just move it and leave it as is? It's 2.5 acres, requires boundary survey, or some staff members suggested, hey, 2.5 is quite large still and could add a lot of cost. Do we think it's better or more appropriate if we have an acreage on there just to say 1 acre or less, because that's the threshold for getting a septic system on there, and that there's some other commonalities, but 2.5 was picked because that's our minimum lot size of our rural zones. So I didn't know if there was a preference on which way to go.
Have you seen problems with boundaries in 2.5 acres?
Say like in the outskirts of the county, like way far
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Farther,
where
like you
people
get from the
infringe.
center, sometimes things get really far.
Yeah.
So what's the issue with the properties that further out than the inside?
I just feel like
The
sometimes I see
GIS.
the GIS parcel layer is really off, and it's hard for staff to tell where property line is sometimes.
Well, the GIS is not utility used for property.
Right, and so here's where,
I think if the surveyor can determine that they can illustrate setbacks properly, it'll be within their purview and guidelines with professional license to say that information.
Okay,
I mean, that might be
Yeah.
another point to get with practitioners on it, but you know, that's why I started to deviate a little bit from the whole plot plan, site plan stuff. because
Yeah.
We need to get away from the original discussions. The land area wouldn't necessarily matter. I guess that's kind of what I'm saying with it is. And if, you know, we've got people that are printing off a GIS of an image of a property and just throwing stuff on it and saying it's scaled because at the bottom of the drawing, it shows 1 inch is equal to
Yeah.
whatever.
20 feet or
And that
whatever,
doesn't
yeah.
get you back to where
right,
staff had an issue with people putting building permit applications on shoebox.
right,
Right? I mean,
yeah,
Yeah, I think what matters is the boundary, not the size of the lot, I guess is what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, you could, if you have a 2.5 acre parcel and a section line runs the west line or a quarter section line, and they can establish that line. And if they've got a road to the south, and they may be able to develop a plot plan without having a boundary survey, sometimes that's definitely the purview of the land surveyor, but because he or she had regulations that they need to follow, licensure. And I've seen it's really rolling into, I think, what we were trying to avoid originally with a huge expense with having a boundary survey for building permits coming in.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean,
so I could just add, into J and not move this to be AA and just say lot boundaries, and then up at the top, it does say that if our best available data shows a discrepancy in regards to lot boundaries, then we can ask for a certified plan. My biggest issue is just Elevate shows your house with a lot line through the middle of it,
Yeah,
and you're telling me you have 15 feet. I'll just say, this is Elevate is our best available data. You need to get a certified plan, and usually they are within the setback if it's usually not off by that much.
I'll give you an
So-
example. When I lived down on Elmer Road, best road in the county, we did a legal survey, which is it's an adjective for a type of survey, okay? Public notice, you walk around the boundaries with the neighboring properties, you publish it in the paper. We don't want to get into that.
No.
But what I wanted to do when Tammy and I sold our house, I wanted to make sure all our neighbors who I had a great relationship with understood, A, that I was selling it, and B, where the markers were, and I had another surveying firm actually do the work. Okay, and it turned out that the west line of my property was about 70 feet off by
70.
deed and went through the garage. So it's a happenstance that isn't very common, but it does happen. So I wouldn't listen to planning and zoning. I wouldn't listen to an attorney. I would handle it the way my land surveyor asked me to handle it and certify it the way that he thought was necessary. So again, land area, location in the county, all that stuff doesn't matter. But this is getting into, if we've got to do boundary surveys on every plot plan, I'm gonna stay away from the site plan because the site plan is pretty, you know, if you're doing a commercial development, if you're doing the level that comes in for site plan review for a development project, I don't see a single family residential house. Multifamily would be one. But we're getting into a huge expense and delay for homeowners. And then I'm not worried about the workload of surveyors. They'll work it out. They just will. The market will hire more surveyors. They'll hire more people. They'll fill the void, right? But, you know, it's the cost on the public that we're really starting to get in. That's my 2 cents. So I'll step away.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of just saying add lot boundaries to what they have to show, and then we have always the discretion to ask for a
Mhm.
certified plan if there's a discrepancy. So I agree. I'm good with that. Any other conversation on this topic, or you want to move on to the next?
Thanks.
On to the next item. This is more a update. I wanted to tell you that after our plan commission meeting, there was some discussion about all the removed uses. I'm sorry, this is funny. So all of the green strike through areas, I did find another related use to fit those under. So I was hoping we could run through these and just say, agree, disagree, and if need be, I'll pull up the definition and then we can just maybe give a thumbs up on removed uses and, or if we want to save this for the plan commission, we can always bring it up there as well, but just trying to make some progress on the table if we can. So the agriculture related industry, I moved that to intensive agriculture. I also went back and found the 2 preceding ordinances and didn't see that it was added. It wasn't in the 1997 or 1986 ordinances, so I think this use was added post 1997. So, but I didn't see any uses that were use determinations that we had given to that use. So I don't think it's highly demanded. I haven't used it personally. Commercial non-farm animals, we're gonna put that under traditional agriculture, and that was from 1986, so that's a long-standing use. Go ahead.
Long time, no, it's
Yeah.
1986.
Yeah. Bus terminal is still something that I think we're gonna remove, so,
And you have it below as bus terminals.
yes.
So I
Yes,
would
so
get
it's
rid of
there.
at least one
Yes,
or both.
yeah, so
What are
it's
the odds, right?
fringe, and then it was also an 802.
Yeah,
So I don't know if, the bus, I think we have bus stops, right? But I don't know that the county will ever see a need for a bus terminal. I could be wrong, or we could, okay, so.
So what is Hoosier, what is it, rural transit? What do?
they,
have
they run out of Area 10.
Okay,
But the other thing I would say is if that came up, it would be a public works project.
Mhm,
It's not gonna be Greyhound,
Right.
right? So
right,
that's why I would
With
remove it,
government
because it would be under
office.
IP,
okay,
probably.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Jackie, would
Yeah.
that be under, do we have some kind of an institutional use or government
Yeah.
use?
we could do government offices or, government, I think,
Government operations?
yeah,
Yeah, because that's who would,
government office.
Or
facility.
facility, there you go.
Yeah.
government facility.
government
Yeah, I mean,
facility.
I don't know if Greyhound or anybody like that will be coming back through, but it seems like that most bus terminals would be government. But I don't know.
Okay, great.
So under ag-related industry, can we back up one? So,
Yeah,
so intensive agriculture,
yeah,
is the word intensive appropriate, or does that give I'm just thinking of somebody at a rezone or somebody going through, it's intensive, it may not be intensive.
mhm. Uh,
I'm just wondering why,
Yeah.
why we chose intensive.
Yeah. So I think Larry and I were trying to come up with a terminology that, and we did not do the definition yet, but in our discussion, we were trying to come up with a definition that encompasses uses such as slaughterhouse or processing facilities, having enough livestock that would be barely under the categorization of a confined animal feeding operation that the state defines. And then I think there were just like a few other uses that we thought that maybe could fit under there.
Okay.
So I don't know, we really, again, haven't had any huge issues on that, but I think it might be good to have something just
in case.
under the state, because the state's confined feeding animal operation is pretty high. There's a lot of livestock included in that, so I think that our stormwater team and others would be interested in regulating something just under that.
Okay. Just curious.
Okay. Okay. All right, then we come to taxidermist. Learned a lot about taxidermists. They actually have a permit through the state, so I think we could just permit that with it requiring permit through the state. I also looked in like where they bury their materials, and there's regulations by the state for that, so,
Who would have thought? I didn't
don't-
even
I
think of that,
wouldn't
but you're right,
know.
they have to do something with that.
yeah. Business service and enclosed buildings, we just have that as business service. And one of the things that, I think we're looking to do is to consolidate the number of uses, so it's less duplicative, but just to take a look at what business service is so far. I think I've dropped in some of the uses that are combined in that use. Business services, businesses that are created for serving other businesses includes receiving and shipping, copying, newspaper printing, commercial printing, printing of periodicals, books, greeting cards. And we could add to this list of just sort of general business service uses that we think might fall into this category. I was thinking like FedEx, or even, you might even consider, if someone had like a sort of a package drop off, like an Amazon package drop off, satellite location, we could put it under this, something like that. So,
Most of those are inside
right,
existing, pharmacies and
right,
businesses.
yeah. Yeah, I can't think of the distinction between enclosed buildings and non-enclosed. I couldn't really, they didn't have a definition in 833, so I'm not really sure what business services might be outdoors, but. And then they had commercial use as a principal use. I'm not really, we have never used that, and not really, they don't have a definition for that. It doesn't tell us what the use is, I don't think. Go ahead and ice vending machines fall under business services. That's a good question. True. Didn't think about that. Okay. Good thought. Let me write that down. So maybe ice vending machines outside.
The question is, does it require a site plan?
Yeah, that's the main question. Definitely requires electricity. Newspaper printing, as I mentioned, that made its way into business service. So resorts, we don't have a. I think that if we want to encourage resorts, or we have a zone for resorts, we could keep it in the ordinance. Otherwise, we could say we don't allow resorts and they require a PUD. So it's up to the group if you think that we need to be able to have a resort use, or if you would rather that be discouraged or put as a PUD.
Is Four Winds a resort?
Technically,
It is, isn't it?
I think they
Yeah.
would be the only resort.
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah,
have discussion?
Jackie,
Yep.
Jackie,
they-
I think if you want to have them as PUDs, you would have to retain resorts as a use. And the only zone that they could be allowed in would be a planned unit development.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you would put it in the use table with no, wouldn't be permitted in any zone? Or
Except
would you
for,
actually put PUD in the table?
I would just put a PUD in the table.
Okay. Think through that. All right.
Yeah, I just don't, I just don't see the potentiality for that kind of thing happening, and if it does, it's gonna be so unique
Yeah,
that I don't think we can define and create
right,
something for it, right? Because
Right.
it's gonna depend on what it is. Is it
right.
a outside retreat center? Is it a hotel and spa? What is it? So
Right.
it could vary so much. It's such a broad
Yeah.
topic,
And I don't want the plan commission and others to spend exorbitant amount of time on a use that may never come to
Yeah.
fruition. If someone could just propose a PUD, I think that might be the better option.
I agree.
I'll have to think
How
about
do we
that.
do mobile homes or like mobile home park?
Yeah,
Because it's usually that has to be a PUD.
right.
And did we just make a
Separate chapter.
paragraph at the beginning and say these uses are,
I put it in here as that.
okay,
Don't we have a,
We have a separate chapter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
so
I thought.
this would refer to
Okay.
that, but yeah, it's a whole chapter.
the problem with that chapter is just saying is that it's so expensive to develop it.
Yeah,
You
No one
can't get
does
to
it.
where
Yeah,
manufactured homes are affordable for people, which is a
Yeah.
great stepping stone
right.
to the next level.
Unless we do a residential tip.
Unless what?
We do a residential tip, but that's another discussion for another day, because that's what we'll be talking about in the near future.
Well,
Yeah, so I think,
Tiny homes. manufacturing.
so Dave, you would actually have a column for plan unit development and just put like a list of Ps in there. I mean,
Or
everything
just-
would be
or-
a PUD.
Yeah, or just what you did for the manufactured home, just because if you're only gonna allow it in a PUD, it makes sense to say that. And whatever they come up with, as far as their definition of resort, they're gonna have to convince the commissioners that it's okay.
Okay,
And I think a list of anything that can only be done in a PUD is not saying you can't do other things in a PUD.
right, right.
Right.
It's just saying that otherwise. Okay, that makes sense.
well, the purpose of the PUD too is it's a unique concept that doesn't fit anywhere else. And what Julie said, in my opinion, is right on, that they're all gonna have a different market idea. They're not gonna be a one size fits all.
Right. Good point. Amusement arcade is just sort of an older use. It didn't have a definition, but I'm just assuming that maybe it's not an individual use that we'll see a demand for anymore. My alarm doesn't lock the doors, I didn't get that. So
Like urban air.
I think
It's
it could
not-
just be an amusement use, or I think we've struggled with the amusement category a bit. We don't get that many.
So it would be, if you think about it, it would be things like, yeah, the Jumpin' Joeys and
Yeah.
the gymnastics places and the arcades and movie theaters, indoor movie theaters, like, you know what I mean, like all those things.
Private indoor recreation.
There you go.
Yeah,
I think
okay, I
that's
think
where
we
it
have
fits.
I
that.
think we do
Okay,
have that one.
Because it's traffic going in and out,
yeah,
you know.
doesn't make a difference if it's a, well, I think we also have gyms under there.
I mean, the thing I look at too is on some of these uses, just because we haven't seen a popularity, doesn't necessarily mean, doesn't mean we don't need to have a basket
Right.
to fall in.
But a general basket is better than a specific one. Like, I hate that we have every dang thing under, you know, dirigible construction, you know, everything under the sun, telegraph lines, you know, stuff that's, you know, we make it harder on ourselves when we try to enumerate everything instead of just
Yeah.
saying there's indoor recreation, there's outdoor recreation, there's indoor outdoor, there's, you know,
Mhm.
why do we have to enumerate everything? I mean,
Right.
it just,
Especially if there's not a difference in where you would see it being
yeah,
permitted.
yeah.
Sometimes we went through the exercise of enumerating a lot of things, and then we looked at the zoning table and we're like, these are both permitted in the same 3 zones with the same condition. How can we combine them or can we not? So, but the private recreation facility, we do have a definition for that, and it's supposed to be, I think, more of like a gym use, but do you want me to broaden that out to say amusement arcades, and then other, just like, I don't know how we classify Jumpin' Joey's, was it just like?
Well,
I think that's
are
a
you sure we
restaurant.
don't have another one that
Is
is
that a
sort of,
restaurant?
No, it's a-
because I
Urban air.
envision this like a
We did some sort of
karate
commercial
facility.
indoor
I do too.
I mean, I did the side design, that was like,
Gymnastics.
kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese type.
Yeah, but I think we called it indoor
But
rec
Why
or
would you
something.
call it a private?
So you think, we would think that places like Urban Air, a gymnastics gym, Jumpin' Joey's, and a
There
amusement
you go,
arcade
private
could all
recreation
be.
facility, indoor, outdoor, yeah, because,
Okay.
yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the problem is this definition is not just the general commercial use, because it says residents and guests of a development, a nonprofit primary,
Yeah.
secondary ed facility, so we have to add something in here about a general commercial
Yeah.
establishment,
Yeah,
whatever it
This
may
is-
be, because there'll be something new in 5 years or a
Mhm.
year that we can't even anticipate right now.
Right.
right. Yeah, this is what we have in the ordinance currently. Oh, and I should say like laser,
Well, I was gonna say,
Yeah,
so
laser
somebody
tag,
opened up
that
a
kind of
laser
stuff.
tag, would that be? in
Bowling.
this?
would we also do paintball, like, cause that's
Paintball.
outdoor?
Paintball, indoor, outdoor,
Okay.
anything like, Oh,
Well,
I
we
just had it on the.
grouped it into also like swim club, tennis club, that was supposed to also.
Yeah.
Private recreation center.
Private or public. It could be private. it could be
The only
public.
thing I guess, I think, remember Larry talking a little bit about this, and it's just, do you want to be attracting people from all over, like regional attraction for the recreation area, or
doesn't
do you want
matter.
neighborhood, or
Doesn't
doesn't
matter.
matter? Okay,
Doesn't matter,
okay,
doesn't matter.
okay.
I mean, a public park is an IP public park, and that's different, but this is, yeah.
There you have a chat.
Oh, thanks. Laser tag, yeah.
There you go.
Same way,
Oh, I was thinking like mini golf, stuff like
man. Oh,
that.
mini golf,
Yeah.
okay.
And
Like a top golf run. I mean,
yeah, like,
saying
you know,
that it's
bumper
kind of
cars,
what
golf
Yeah,
carts,
golf.
Batting
golf carts,
cages.
batting cages, yeah, anything like that, so. Instead of having to enumerate them all,
Right,
it's recreational facility. They can serve food, they might not serve food. They can have
Right.
three activities, they might have one.
right.
Who cares?
Because in the site plan requirements would dictate parking.
Parking, but,
For you, it'd be
Right.
based on the use.
right,
Yeah,
right, how
that's right.
heavy intensive,
I think
where
that's
it's
good.
at, what street it's on. Firing range. Nobody wants one by their house.
That's a whole other topic there.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, okay. Taxi cab stand, I don't have that one anymore. I have that removed. It happens in the right of way anyways, maybe, like you order Uber on the road, I don't think it'll ever.
Your house to somebody else,
Yeah.
yeah. it's-
Yeah, okay. Optical instruments and lenses, I put that under retail sales. Plaster, central mixing, we have cement, paving, central mixing, and rock crushing definition and use. All those things combined, they're all equally intense.
So let's go back to, I'm sorry, let's go back to taxi.
Cab.
service.
Yeah,
Yeah, so, I mean, it's, we think it's of the past, but what are the things that we're using now? So is Uber permitted if Uber, just a taxi cab sting is all you're talking about? Okay.
but I don't know. if
Not
we have
like
something
not like a
right away.
depot operationally where you'd have, you know, a garage and 6 cabs
Well,
coming
that's
in and
right.
out. Is that what you're talking
Well,
about?
I'm thinking, okay, if Tron says, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna buy 7 cars and I'm gonna hire 7 or 10 people to run Uber, I'm gonna collect $1 per trip. And Tron would have to house those vehicles somewhere, or he would say take them home, I don't know. But the taxi cab
It's
stand
more
is
like a
different.
terminal.
What's
Yeah,
that?
that sounds more like a terminal. Like
Yeah.
a taxi terminal.
Yeah,
Or a
that's
bus
right.
terminal.
This
Yeah.
is what the definition is currently. Establishment engaged in furnishing passenger transportation by automobiles not operated on regular schedule.
But to Julie's point, we've got things in there now that would suffice as a terminal, suffice as a business where Tron's business may be a success.
We're gonna add in electrical vehicle charging stations, so I'm guessing that if there is a use in the future, potentially that could be a location where they're charged up, waiting, ready to go, and then sort of combine that. Yeah, it's hard to predict what's gonna take off, what you need to prepare for. Okay, and then construction trailer, we heard that we wanted to keep that as a specific use, just to keep timelines on it.
As a temporary use, right?
use.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be its own use, but in the definition, I think we could just define it as temporary.
Okay.
So then if you have an approval for a subdivision or a commercial project, and they have a construction trailer, that's listed as an allowed use within that subdivision?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, it's listed as permitted in a lot of the residential zones. It's not permitted in the rural zones. But it is, there's a allowance in the business zones as well, and industrial.
So if I had a subdivision in agro reserve,
Yeah,
could I have a construction trailer?
I think it should be in every,
That's
except
what I'm- that's
mining,
what I'm-
except for,
that's what I'm-
except for
Yeah.
mining extraction.
yeah. So when a lot of what we see in the ag R, CR and FR is, hey, can I either keep my home here
Mhm.
while I build new?
Mhm.
And less so the construction trailer. So we say, yes, you can apply for a demolition permit and a new permit, if that's your intention, at the same time, and then we verify before the new permit gets occupancy that the other one's demo or on its way to demo.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we can make it permitted.
Either way,
also.
I'm just
It's-
looking
It
at
doesn't make a difference. I don't
Somebody
think.
gets approval for a project and then they roll a construction trailer in and then they've got to go through another process in order for it to be there. That's only
Yeah,
a minor thing, but I can see
Right.
it only wasting staff's time and whole project.
talked about bus terminals, government facilities, a relocation of off-premise signs. We deleted that from chapter 807 recently and got rid of the distinction between on-premise and off-premise. And then there was another Supreme Court case that allows you to differentiate. So Dave, I don't know if you have any thoughts on keeping the on-premise versus off-premise.
I think I mean, I guess my feeling is that I think it's the safest thing to keep it the way we have it now. Because we're regulating size, so it'll never crop up. The content aspect will never crop up as an issue.
Okay.
And again, this opinion was, it was a mixed bag. So,
Right. Okay.
and
I think the relocate, oh, go ahead.
yeah, it just avoids questions relating to political speech and commercial speech. And so the way we have it now, it's just related to sign size, which I think is as safe as you can get. And,
Okay.
and it'll accomplish what we want, I think.
Yeah, I think it does. So I think we accidentally kept in the relocation of off-premise signs in chapter 833. It hasn't come into play, but we got rid of it in 801 and 807. So is it fair to say, go ahead and get rid of it and we're just regulating based by size then?
Well, the thing about relocation is that I think there's state law that basically says if you're doing some project and you require somebody to move their sign, you have to pay them for the sign or allow them to relocate. So that may be, I'll check on that, but that may be something that we can just keep in there.
Dave, are you referring to a situation where there's road construction and a sign has to be moved and then relocated? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
We did get rid of that, Dave. So if we want to add it back in, because Larry, you and me and Lisa Ridge talked about, are there any projects that the county has left in the near future that would require the relocation of any signs? And Lisa didn't think so, because with all the pole signs that we have left, we pretty much have either done projects there or don't have projects planned. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'd have to make a decision of whether to put that back in the ordinance, because we did just get rid of that.
Yeah,
You know-
and that's one of those things where you just never know what kind of a project's gonna come up in the future. So,
Yeah, the state's right now looking at changing the on-ramp from 45, 46 to 69, and that might include
I see.
moving a pole, some signs. So I'm
I see.
just looking at their map.
And the state, even though it would be on the state's dime, we would want to have a provision
Yeah, I
for
think
it,
we
yeah.
would, yeah. We just never know.
Okay. We'll have to work together on signs. That'll be a whole separate day.
We love talking about signs.
Okay. And then social services, we have a use just social services that we've added in there, and we think that'll actually be helpful for some of the other uses that we're proposing. Let me see what the definition is. Social service uses any community serving activity other than those separately defined, conducted by a nonprofit which provides service to a segment of the community's population having needs as a result of specific circumstances, low income, illness, developmental disability, and the like.
Does
So
this
it's
include
maybe private.
residential?
So we have another use, which is recovery housing, I believe. Let me just check that.
Would that last one include like a Who's Your Host food bank?
Yeah, I think we were trying to get at the non-governmental social services that we have in the county. Is it called recovery housing or the?
Well, there's-
Up to the table.
There was the medical recovery, which is private, right?
Emergency housing, and then supportive housing, I think we had,
The group care homes.
group care. Yeah, so
So what if-
emergency housing would be like, there's an emergency, people's houses got torn down by tornadoes, there's a place
So-
for them to go.
So what about a homeless shelter?
I
Would
think
that be
would
considered supportive?
I think that might be supportive, but let me check. Check the environmental with past or future violence. Okay, this feels like we borrowed this from another location.
Yes, it does.
So let me, I think this
Footnote
might,
180.
I think this might be what this UDO uses, the city's ordinance uses for supportive housing. And I think we wanted to keep it in there as a place shelter to say this is a use that we could separate out for this type of housing. So emergency housing, supportive housing, and then we would also have social service use,
Non-residential social. services.
non-residential. Okay, so you want to change it to non-residential. Okay, that makes sense. Does the group have any opinions or thoughts on the terminology that we're using? So emergency housing and supportive housing, do those seem clear? Would you rather a different use of language there? See what other communities are using?
Is there a duration factor between the two? Emergency housing seems to me to be something more like as soon as they can, get their feet up underneath and go live with family, get their house repaired, where supportive housing, I don't know that it matters. I'm just wondering if there's a time factor associated or an expectation. Is it emergency housing that someone is there for 6 months? Is that really emergency housing? I mean,
Right.
It depends on every single scenario, but
Right.
then I'm wondering why nonprofit would matter with that on any of them. Why would it?
Because you don't want a hotel,
Okay.
right? So it'd have to be, I think the terminology is a little whack, maybe.
This is what?
A little whack, maybe it's in the terminology, because it's not, a homeless shelter isn't necessarily for an emergency, although it'll be an emergency to the person experiencing homelessness.
Yeah.
And what, one of the things we ran into a few years ago at the beginning of COVID was when they're trying to put a winter shelter together at what had been a warehouse, and the city was just a pain in terms of getting it approved. And it was an emergency because we had nowhere for people to go to stay safe. And That was really frustrating. And so I just feel like if it's truly emergency, like a tornado or COVID or whatever, it's a short-term event. And that's a different thing than having a homeless shelter for people who are experiencing an emergency, right, in their own personal life,
Right.
right? And maybe that's
That's
the
why I'm
issue.
wondering the time period, if there, what,
Yeah,
maybe a turnover, or I don't know how you define it, because just like we're saying it, you know, my emergency isn't the same as someone else's emergency, so it's a.
Right.
and like with what Beacon's proposing right now, probably in the city, but what they're proposing is something that is a drop-in center, a homeless shelter, and transitional housing, right? So
It
that
kind of
line is not.
blurred, yeah.
Is not clear and distinct.
So then how in I guess in the code, would we want to deal with like a true emergency shelter that needs to crop up like next day within 24
Quickly,
hours? Do
yeah.
you want to say that we define it separately or very clearly and say it's permitted in every zone?
Mhm.
Or how do we?
I mean, I think of
handle-
the fairgrounds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The fairgrounds is a great example where if there was a tornado
yeah,
and it knocked out the west side of town,
yeah,
there's a good chance you're gonna put people in there, right?
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you might bring trailers in, you might bring, like a Katrina situation or whatever,
right,
but I don't know how we would even be involved as a planning department at that point. Because if it's that true an emergency, it is not gonna go through the planning process. It's gonna be an emergency management. Commissioners are gonna override everything and we're just gonna make it happen.
right. Right,
So I think we just need to worry about
the other type of
the
housing.
other type of
Okay.
housing.
So if we, Dave, if we just kind of get rid of emergency housing and it's just what other orders take effect and we wouldn't have to address it in the ordinance to be able to get that on the ground?
Yeah, unless you want to have something in here that just says emergency housing. If you want to put any limits on the time or whatever, but just say it's to be determined through executive order or however that's done. Just so if it crops up, you have something to point to say this is why it's okay to do this.
Okay,
Does that eliminate like a smaller scale need of emergency housing? If you're just one or two people are out due to flooding, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think.
Are we
that-
not going to be able to address that? Because,
But they wouldn't want to go through the planning process.
no, I
you know,
get
so-
that. I'm just saying it's just a little outside of what you were kind of.
Yeah,
but if it
speaking
is
on.
bringing trailers on or anything, then we do have to issue the permits for those.
yeah, you have
unless
to do the
they're-
ILP.
Yeah,
Um,
so we could say, yeah, to be determined through the executive order or commissioner decision for, a period not to exceed 60 days or
yeah,
something.
because we would work with emergency management, we work with
Yeah.
building, we work with you all too,
Right.
already, we work with highway and
Yeah.
stormwater. We work with everybody to-
Right.
to determine what to do.
Right, we just don't want to be in the way.
Yeah, and you don't want to make somebody wait 30,
Yeah.
60, 90 days.
Right,
So I guess the question is, who are we trying to serve with this topic?
I think that we want to make sure that we don't have something that will prohibit emergency housing and make sure that it's clear, if we do have a place where we want to incentivize it to go, we do that, or if we just want to define it and say to be determined and permitted upon, executive order or commissioner decision.
So what about, and this is my ignorance, but the Shalom House, what does the Shalom House do? It takes people that are indigent, people who are homeless, people who are coming into town because they've been
Yeah.
where they were.
Yeah. Yeah, Shalom doesn't offer very much in terms of actual housing, but they offer support services and a meal and referrals and things like that. But the Beacon House, or Beacon Project, which is what they're proposing, and they applied for a massive grant for. If they get it, it would be that referral, daytime support, a homeless shelter, and transitional housing, all of them.
So
It'll
this is,
probably be in the city, of course, but
right, but that's kind of the target that we're looking at, correct? I mean, the emergency order stuff, to me, it's down in Louisiana, it's New Orleans, and they gotta go to the football stadium.
Yeah,
Julie and her team are gonna say it's gonna happen.
yeah.
Everybody
That would
line
be
up, get your
emergency
act together,
housing
get
under
it set
this.
up for
Yeah, that would be emergency housing under this. What we're talking about is also supportive housing. Maybe we need like it could be like long-term supportive housing or something. It's just like a routine, or not routine, but just a,
Short-term shelter, long-term shelter,
yeah,
not-for-profit, yeah. Just to keep us separate from hotels and Airbnbs and whatnot.
I think like middle way house.
mhm.
There's a couple of comments.
Oh,
in
okay.
chat.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
He's just
social
listing the whole thing.
services, that's helpful. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Drew. Okay. All right. Making good progress. Okay, now we're down to the boarding house, and I think we were going to, so the way I read boarding house definition is sort of like the new term for a shared room in your house, like an Airbnb shared room. A dwelling or part thereof for compensation, temporary lodging and meals. So we're thinking about having the owner occupied short-term rental, which would be allowed in a lot of zones, which is where the owner's
That
there.
seems to be a boarding house.
You think boarding house needs to be so? Okay.
I just don't think we need it. It just feels like it's already covered.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you all think, but it just, because that's a B and B or it's a, whatever.
Can't
Yeah.
think if ever we've used it.
I don't know if we have used it,
No.
but I think that,
It's not something you're gonna see a lot of in the county either. You might see it in the city when there were a lot of students using boarding houses and things, but
Mhm.
it's just not a.
yeah. Okay, maybe we'll add to this definition too, just to make sure it's clear that we can, owner would be, I don't know, is it, so a boarding house is just a managed building where people are staying in different rooms and they're
It's
just
like
smaller scale?
Fraternity sorority almost.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
that already, well,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Just
And
to
it would
differentiate
be,
it.
sometimes there would be, this is not the same as a standard apartment because sometimes the bathroom facilities are shared, the kitchen facilities are shared
Mhm.
instead of, right? So it's just like you're renting a bedroom. You're
right,
not renting, and to me, some of this, where I could see some of this happening would be something like a treatment facility, a halfway house kind of scenario.
right,
But to me, that's not the same as a boarding house.
right, okay. A peak boarding house, agricultural sale barn, facility where livestock auction market is conducted, may include agricultural products. So we have a use termed agriculture-related commerce. And that would include things such as agricultural sale barn.
Yep, yeah.
Okay, we can add more to these two.
But it could, agricultural related commerce could be something like, you pick orchard or,
Yeah.
or you cut down your own Christmas tree, you got that on their Christmas tree farm.
Mhm.
But that's different than a traditional Christmas tree farm because you're actually inviting people in, which means you need more parking,
them.
Yeah,
right? So there's a commerce side to what's under the traditional side.
right,
The horse farm could do auctions. Right, which means they're bringing people in.
yeah. Good point. We have had a demand for cooperative housing or communal housing. I don't know if that would be under boarding house.
That's kind of what I was thinking when we were
What?
talking about the boarding house.
Wouldn't the communal housing fit under, because we don't, unlike the city, we don't limit how many unrelated people can live in a building.
We
So,
technically do
kind
have
of.
a definition.
We have a
for that.
definition, it's weird.
If we wanted to stray
We
away
have a
from that,
butler.
but,
Oh.
yeah,
oh,
a lot of ordinances do define family. So that's why if you move towards single unit dwelling and you regulate something else like number of kitchens or
Oh,
something like
God,
that.
I don't want to
know.
be like the city.
Well, yeah, I think we want to move away from too much in the terminology of unrelated persons, because we have,
Oh.
yeah, that's also puts us in a.
And it was a
position.
nightmare to talk about. It
Oh,
dragged
just,
on and on.
it's just, it's
I
just
felt like we were
unnecessary.
chasing our own tail at a few
Yeah.
different times.
It
Yeah,
is unnecessary. I mean, I wonder if, it could be that, to me, that seems like owner occupied rental.
mhm.
And maybe owner occupied rental could also be expanded to include a cooperative ownership.
Long-term owner occupied rental or something,
Yeah, cooperative, because everybody be pitching in to pay for the house or whatever,
right?
right? So that ownership doesn't have to be a person, it could be a cooperative.
Okay.
And then
so
that
cooperative would be
gets-
separate.
That
from
gets rid
boarding.
of all those issues, right?
Okay, and you would, so boarding house would be separate from cooperative housing.
Yeah, boarding house is more like renter occupied rental.
Yeah. And then, okay. Makes sense. We'll come back to the discussion of unit versus family versus the full-time position. Auction house, we're keeping auction house. Temporary dwelling, we have reconsidered that to be under the detached accessory dwelling units. This temporary dwelling use was for having a second home on a lot when there was a medical hardship. And we've seen a lot of people just fall into the dadu category, and therefore it's not temporary anymore. They could just keep it long-term. So we've created an outlet for that. And then the temporary houses are really hard to track over time and sort of
They were
confusing.
expensive for low-income people. too,
Yeah.
Because they were supposed to come back every year to the PCA for reapproval, discussion of their health
Oh,
issues.
God. Oh, that's
And,
so, that's so,
I had one that I
Onerous.
converted into a dadu, like, as soon as we could. I
Yeah.
was like, hey, here's this.
So I
yeah,
think
that's
we need to just get rid
onerous.
of it. We
Yeah.
haven't really recommended it to people. So rooming, lodging houses, we're thinking that that is going to be the short-term rental owner occupied. When we go to the definition, there's not going to be one. 'cause it's
See, what's the
833.
difference between that and a boarding house?
It's cutting hairs a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering, so go
Yeah.
back to go back to the right, Jackie, would you
Yeah.
please?
sure. So I had them under the same, but if we want to keep this boarding
I see.
house, I could see this also being boarding house then. I think these two are very similar.
Yep.
Under 833, there's no definitions for these uses, so we have to look at Google and a dictionary.com. So I think 802 provided us with the definition. I think rooming and lodging house is probably the equivalent. There's a lot of duplication between
Mhm.
802 and 833. So I can just make them both boarding house.
We're only occupied rental.
Yeah, unless we think that boarding house, rooming and lodging are the same, but do we think boarding house / rooming and lodging is the same as short-term owner occupied rental?
It can be,
Like,
it
Yeah,
can be.
okay,
it's like.
I just think you just delete the massive numbers of them and group them all into one if you can.
okay, and find
Yeah,
a term
yep.
that works.
Yeah, I guess one question, Jackie, not all boarding houses would be necessarily owner occupied. They might have like a manager or something like that, but
It's almost like bed and breakfast, short-term versus
Yeah, but we-
long-term.
But we have bed and breakfast.
Yeah, but that's how I'm almost
Yeah.
envisioning it, because you're
Yeah.
supposed to be providing meals
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, we don't have to do owner occupied, it can be owner or manager occupied, just what we found in the research that one of our fellows did is you cut down on the number of complaints if there's someone on the
Yes,
premise
indeed.
to handle any nuisances that might come about. So, okay, so rooming, lodging, boarding house. Long term. Okay. Okay, and then industrial uses with potentially adverse effects. we are getting rid of that one. It was not defined, not really, I think we have a use that will be including, that maybe is taking place of this, but, heavy industrial manufacturing, so there was a use in 802 called abrasive products, and there's other uses that I think probably fall into that category, so we likely, we'll be able to look at it, but I'm not sure about the adverse effects, they never define that, I just don't think we want to keep that terminology in the ordinance.
I guess this is just where it just seems so silly to try to list every possible thing and impossible to do.
Yeah.
I just think, if you all are told by a potential commissioner, hey, I want to make textiles and I've got 300 looms in there, or whatever, you're gonna know what that is, right? And I just having this list that tries to be comprehensive but could never be comprehensive, I think is a problem.
Yeah, we have a few uses that have categorize or sort of general openness to having more uses combined with it. I think retail sales and manufacturing definitely. I think where we start getting into some questions or concerns is where we want to have maybe an intermix of residential and limited business. And if we don't define those really clearly, you could see some uses in residential that we might not
Right,
otherwise want.
and that you would want to make sure that there's not the noise or the
Yeah.
dust or the police or whatever. That I get,
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
what's appropriate for residential area, what's not.
right.
But otherwise, it just seems like if you're manufacturing something, prove
Yeah.
to us that it can be limited business,
Right. Okay. Yeah. That was actually that was all the removed, so thank you for going through that with me. One thing that Dave Schilling wanted to bring up was the question under our current ordinance, this would be a text amendment, but along the same lines. If we wanted to get rid of the term guest home or guest house under 802, because since this was put in the ordinance, we now have a detached accessory dwelling unit. And so the difference between guest home is it's supposed to be occasional guests that are not paying, and there's no limitation on the size. Whereas a detached accessory dwelling unit doesn't necessarily, it can be for pay, but it's typically a family member. And it does have a limitation on the size. So what happens is people will build a guest house because it doesn't have the size limitation or other limitations. And then we'll find out that it's being rented or used by a permanent guest as a full-time
Yeah.
residence. So I think the question was, could we get rid of guest house, or is there a concern with
Is
that?
there any? Is it the with or without a kitchen that's an issue, maybe? No?
It's the
That's,
people.
that's, that was proposed, I think, and that's one of those things where it's just hard to stay on top of unless you stop by and inspect it periodically.
Neighbors.
But the other thing, Jackie, is that we don't have any limitation on the number of guest homes, houses that could be placed on the site, whereas under the DADU, I think there's only one allowed.
I just don't know that we need a guest house.
Okay,
I agree.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. You go to Amazon and spend $10,000 and buy a nice looking studio for your backyard. It doesn't have a bathroom, it doesn't have a kitchen. So now you can have people living there. That worries me.
yeah. Haven't seen that on Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
Look it up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if I took to the next step, plan commission, just to strike guest house, I would just strike the definition, strike the use, and that would be allowable, or,
Yeah, because we
Okay.
have daddies and daddies.
okay, okay,
You don't think there's gonna be someone that wants to build one, there's some big lots out there and, there's people that wanna build beautiful homes and make a beautiful guest home.
A detached accessory dwelling
We
unit,
See those.
Right.
it's already covered.
That's what I was gonna ask. We've already got something there to cover. I'm just, when we were in 4-H, we had a family that they had family come in from New Jersey every year and they spent the summer with, and they stayed with them or they stayed with family in different places, but I could see if it was a regular thing, that they would stay a month or something
Mhm.
and have family come in and stay with them,
Right.
or friends or whatever. And that's covered is what you're saying.
It is covered, but it's limited in size. The biggest thing for the detached accessory dwelling unit is it's 1,000 square feet or less, because
That
it's
makes
supposed to be visually accessory to the primary
Right.
use. So people opt for guest house once they hear that,
Yeah.
and then they say, oh, it'll be a guest
Yeah,
house.
I'll
and
do
then-
a 2,000 square foot guest house. and,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
really a daddy.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Where is a guest house permitted currently versus added?
good question.
Oh, which zones you mean?
Guest homes come up somewhat frequently when someone wants a pool house, they can be lived in by.
And that's the
temporary.
detached accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah,
And
It's a
Dave's-
California thing.
And Dave's concern is that once they get in, it's hard to know if they're gonna get out.
Yeah,
And then would the size of that structure make a difference?
I think it makes a difference because it shouldn't be bigger than the house and it shouldn't be, right?
The ones we sometimes see are a 6,000 square foot house that needs a 2,000 square foot guest house, and
okay, so we would need to add accessory dwelling unit permitted in suburban residential, medium density residential, and high density residential to be equivalent to all the zones that's allowed to have accessory, or sorry, guest house.
So, but how would you, I mean,
No, no.
that
sorry,
seems
I did that
conditional.
wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It would be, sorry, because I just.
It's just
it's
guest
low
house
density residential.
yeah, because that's too small.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're an
Low-density.
SR, you don't have the property to put. Right,
And that's what I was thinking is like, should they be permitted where there's enough land to build something bigger than, you
Yeah.
know, the
Additional.
limits of the accessory dwelling?
Yeah,
But Dave had another concern, and the other concern was there's no limitation for
Right.
the guest house.
right,
yeah.
yeah, the number of them.
did we explicitly say only one accessory dwelling unit
Yeah.
per lot?
I
Yeah,
think that
I
is
believe
made a
we
lot
did.
more
Yeah, but I mean,
clear.
they're square
It's,
footage.
but the question is, no matter what, you still have to have a certain amount of space.
Right,
Even if you have, you know, even if you're in something like forest reserve, you still have to have enough space to do it. Because it could be, right, so that doesn't make it conditional,
right.
that just makes it, yeah.
So low density residential is what size? Let me check that.
So again, what you're saying, Dave, your concern is that you could have multiple guest houses on a single
Yep.
property.
Yeah,
0.34 acres allows, you could technically, I mean,
You could be in a low density residential and have more than that
yeah,
acreage, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I guess, but still in that kind of environment, I don't know how you have a detached.
Don't we
Dwelling
limit the
unit.
square footage on a lot?
we
Okay.
do, but also right now, it's only permitted on 5 acres or greater in the ag,
Mhm.
CR and FR zoning districts. So guest home, you could have it in 2.5 acre lot size in those 3 zones. And also if we open it up to SR and LR,
Oh
like
my
the guest
God.
homes,
That could be a half an acre. There's no way you even have room.
then, yeah, then it would be, you wouldn't have to stipulate the 5 acres, but then you wouldn't have a gap between where the other one was
Yeah,
permitted, so. I can look at the data on how many we get in SR
Yeah.
and LR. I would say it's probably minimal.
I
but-
think the thing to do would be to strike guest house and then work on this part of it.
Right,
Okay.
where we
Right,
could maybe
yeah.
allow it larger.
Yeah, maybe there is a way to do a conditional on 2.5 acres,
Yeah.
right,
something
or
like that.
something, right? Make it broader. But just eliminating guest house might help, at least for the short term. That's my
Okay.
opinion.
I think that the idea behind the 5 acres was so that in the rural zones, you didn't have necessarily an increase in density.
Yeah.
Because you still have the same dwelling unit gross density
Mhm.
outcome.
Mhm.
If there's more than one guest house, isn't it almost a compound? I mean,
But it doesn't say in there that it can only be one.
that's
the
where I'm headed.
Yeah.
Why don't we look at
Keeping guest
limiting
houses
size,
limiting,
whatever, I
yeah.
get kind of tired about that, but the number.
Yeah.
Because then again, if you have family coming in or you have people coming
Yeah.
in and they can't get along enough to live in the same building together,
But,
then they can go
but
find
couldn't you,
another
but
place.
couldn't you then use an addy or daddy? Why do you have to have a guest house? Why
Yeah, I don't
couldn't
know
you
yet.
use- Yeah, right, so you could
I'm not
use,
there yet.
yeah, you could create an addy, right? So picture that, you can create an addy and it's a pool house. And then in the fall, your relatives always come for 3 weeks and they stay there. That's an accessory dwelling unit and it's perfectly fine, and it also has other purposes that you can use it for, but who cares, right? That's fine. But the fact is that it's not going to be so close to the neighbors, and it's not going to be, it's not gonna be 3 of them. So you have that option.
So the city, they went with a percentage, I think, at one point where like the accessory dwelling can't be, has to be X amount versus what the square foot of the existing home is.
Mm.
So if it's like a
Yeah.
4,000 square foot home, the accessory dwelling had to come in at like X amount, like
400 or.
like half of that or something to
Okay.
that effect. But I
I thought
think if,
about that,
I
yeah.
think if we
Hmm.
work towards that, that would allow people that do have
With the
the
addies
side.
and daddies, or with the guest house? I mean, I guess I just don't see the point of having a guest house if you already have other means.
No, what I'm saying is that maybe adds flexibility to the ad dues
Instead of
to
1,000 square
become a
foot,
little larger
Okay.
if they
Mm.
already have a home that has a huge square footage, right?
right?
Mm. Mhm.
So one thing we found in the county is that some people have a smaller home and they want to actually upgrade to a dadu. And so they'll make the existing home the dadu and then build a primary residence,
Right.
or,
Right.
vice versa.
Right.
So I do think maybe if we did whichever is greater, allow them to pick between the two, but then, if you're doing percentage wise. I mean, I
It
can
gets
think of a house
tricky.
that's
Yeah.
10,000
Yeah.
square
You
feet,
got
so
the
then.
Jacob's mansion. and
Yeah,
you
you're
know,
looking at a 5,000
Yeah.
square foot dadu, so.
Yeah. Oof.
How big is the biggest guest house in the county?
That's a good
That's a
question.
good
I don't
trivia
know.
It is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, I haven't
It's
seen
well
too
over
many guest
1,000.
houses.
I think
Yeah.
there's some we don't even know about.
I'm sure.
That just had a fancy
The,
garage.
the tool sheds that have been locked up, and
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
use the bathroom and kitchen in the house, but they live.
A lot of bonus room conversions over the
Yes,
pandemic.
decks that become
Yeah.
addies and, yeah.
So
yeah, that was
maybe
just
the
my
2.5,
one thought.
okay,
you
so
know.
maybe the size limit, or thinking through the
I'm kinda-
1,000.
It would just
agree
be
with-
nice to have
Yeah.
an option if it's like,
Yeah.
a good desirable location and home,
Yeah.
and to limit them to a smaller space.
1,000 square feet is not small
I,
space.
true,
I
Would
mean,
you
that's,
say it again, Julie?
1,000 square feet is a small space, like a tiny home is 600 to 800 square feet typically,
Yeah,
sometimes it's below 400.
yeah.
So you're
My,
still.
my house was, my house was 1,050 and had a family of 4 in there, and we didn't kill each other. So,
Mine was 900.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty big square footage. I'm pretty comfortable with 1,000, even though it is a high number. I'm comfortable with it. I just,
Okay.
and the other thing I've always wondered is, do we say it has to be 1 story?
No, we don't
Do we
count
want to?
garages or non-livable space.
Right,
So.
but, what about a treehouse? What about I mean, you're gonna get all kinds of requests. I just wonder if somebody could build a 2-level, 800 square foot tiny home.
2 level 800.
with
Well, it's
two-
1,000
like
square foot.
With 400,
maximum.
with 400 on one level, 400 on the other, or a lot, or whatever,
yeah.
right? And then you've now got more square footage
Yeah.
than the floor, so it's really what we're really concerned about is the size of the footprint, not But the question is, do we want to have a 2-story house next to a 1-story? Like a
Right.
2-story detached accessory dwelling unit sitting on a property that has a ranch house with
Right.
1 floor, right? I mean, that's
Got
so,
that one on Bender Road.
Why do we care about the size?
Just visually, I think one's supposed to be accessory to the other,
you don't.
primary
wanna-
residence and
I'm
then
just
an
asking, I mean,
accessory.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that anybody is gonna build a unit that's gonna be the same size or twice the size of their house for their visitors that come. And
Well, except
Just
that's
like
what they, except
Just like Jackie
Yeah.
said, they're gonna move into that one. and-
Yeah. then
call
it's
that the
a-
primary.
But
which
then,
is-
but you're not gonna find an existing home that's 1,000 square feet. So it kind of makes that difficult to happen.
There are some homes that are 1,000 square.
Well,
feet.
there are, I mean, Dave and I just listed basically two.
Yeah, but there are some in the
But we
county.
added a 24 by 24 on it before we moved eventually.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know, I think we get caught too much up in how to limit the size of the structures other than they.
But would you want to have a 2-story house behind a 1-story house and it's called an accessory dwelling unit?
In some instances, the topography may not make a
It
difference.
won't matter.
And
I guess I'm just trying to think about,
we just had a 2-story one proposed on
Because-
Bender Road, but I don't remember what the other house.
because then they could put 8 people in it. And then now you're really changing the density of the neighborhood. And then, 2 of those people drive, whatever, you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
because you're still thinking the footprint is
Yeah,
1,000
yeah,
square feet.
Yeah. I
They were
mean,
gonna be 400 square foot
Yeah, yeah,
and just.
yeah. But you know what I'm saying?
yeah, it's
You could-
maximum livable square feet 1,000 right now.
Yeah.
But we could change it to be different.
Yeah. I'm just
Okay.
I'm just thinking through that it could really become,
Sometimes it's the big massive pole barn
yeah,
that people convert.
Yeah.
small
like a
space.
piece of it
into-
becomes an apartment, like. the-
Oh, and then you call the rest of it non-livable.
Right.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right,
I
yeah.
see.
And
We
then
had
that-
somebody
yeah,
who
yeah.
stored semi.
And that, I guess, would be in
semi-truck
a,
in
that would,
the-
I guess, would be an attached dwelling unit, wouldn't it? Because it's attached to an existing
Structure.
structure?
Well, it has to be attached to the single family residence.
Okay, so then it would still be a detached.
Yeah, so.
And I'm
barn
okay
dominion,
with that,
yeah.
like, that's fine, I mean, you just have to make sure you have an emergency exit, but other than
Yeah.
that.
I see what you mean.
So
Aren't
it's the
there-
size of the space that is what matters, because of how many people can live there. You don't
Yeah.
wanna have, adding that much density, like if everybody in an area ended up adding, 6 to 8 people, what would that do, right? That would add a lot to a density of an area in terms of traffic and. Right.
I use data as a pathway to get around the
Yeah.
subdivision requirements
Yeah.
for the property on subject.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
How
So
would
do
that be-
we,
How would they be successful doing that?
so you don't have to subdivide to get a dadu. And so people just want a second residence on their property to do with it what,
Have it
They
as
would
an
like-
income source.
yeah, it could be an income source for long-term, short-term rental, or they could put a family member in there.
They'd still have to have a septic permit, so, but if the original septic for the house is oversized,
Right.
then they can tap into that existing septic, which you couldn't
Right.
do if you subdivided.
Also, if you have less than 10 acres, you
Right.
can't subdivide, so, but you can add a
Buildable
second dwelling
area.
at 5, yeah.
When do you
So-
plan on taking this to the planning commission next meeting?
Yeah, I think we would like to proceed ahead with it. So the changes I'm hearing, I think a good discussion that we'll keep having but not make changes to right now is the square footage limitation. I'd like to hear the full plan commission's thoughts and make
Mhm.
changes. And then maybe thinking about making 2.5 acres conditional or somehow allowing a dadu on 2.5 acres to make it more comparable to the guest home. Is that what we're hearing? And then not include SR and ER in the,
Yeah, I mean,
in
I
the
think we-
data.
I think
That's
we
1
should-
acre.
I think I'd wanna look and, I'd want details on what you know about, the
Okay.
guest house you know about and where they're at, like what size properties they're on. They still
Okay.
have to fit on buildable area, they still have to
Yeah.
meet all those other requirements, so. I'd be okay looking at that, but I really just think the guest house thing is a big trap, I think we're.
Okay.
Yeah.
So details about guest home. So let's say size of the guest home itself,
Mhm.
size of
Size of
lot,
lot, yep,
And then like how many, do you wanna
And
know
how
like
many-
number of
and how many-
bedrooms or?
Well, and how many guest homes per lot, because
How
if
many
if there can be
guests?
more than one,
Yeah.
then I'd be curious if people are really doing that. What we know about, obviously, we won't know everything. And what happens
Okay.
to, do you happen to know what happens when those properties are assessed that have a guest house or an adu or dadu?
I can think of one right away that I can go to and see how it's assessed, or I can just bring that, I'll just do that. when we
Yeah,
go up
I think I'd be curious about that,
there. Okay,
just more,
yeah.
I don't know that it impacts my decision making on the size or whatever, but I just feel like
Tax-wise.
it's a point of curiosity.
Yeah, okay.
It's the
'Cause if you-
realtors who really wanna know about it.
Because if you rent out that space, then you've got an income coming in.
Right,
Whereas a guest house says no rental, but you can't police that.
Right.
yeah, right.
That's what you.
That's the
Mhm.
problem. We do also list in there the number of complaints.
Yes, there we
About
go.
guest homes being used as rentals.
There you go.
Okay, and then last thing I wanted to report back on was just I talked with Lisa Ridge and Paul Satterley about the gravel road, and because of Dave's input about the potential for the county to have liability in the tort claims,
Yeah,
we're just gonna look into that a little bit further and not take it to the planning commission at this
Okay.
point, so,
sounds good.
okay. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to add?
So you meant, go ahead, Julie, sorry. You mentioned going back and talking to the consultants
Yeah,
and updating them.
yeah,
I don't know if it was an email or I'm going back to the petition that we had about a couple months ago with Sample Road.
mm-hmm,
And all the conversation about the comprehensive plan in the area, and this is opinion, but that area doesn't match the comprehensive plan.
mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering how many locations we have out there that the comprehensive plan, that the uses are so different. And that's a remarkable, to me, that's just
The
not the run of
uses
the
or
mill
the-
with it.
Okay.
But if you look along the corridor of 69,
Yeah,
that the comprehensive plan doesn't match what's there and what's been there for a long time, probably since that comprehensive plan was adopted.
Think,
okay,
I mean, my take on it is rather than going backwards and trying to fix the comp plan, that we should just bear that in mind and just incorporate it into the new ordinance.
Well, I think you're right, but I think the staff and then the plan commission and commissioners need to have something that recognizes, and maybe from the consultant, maybe not from the consultant, I don't know, but it just seems like there's some areas that need to be looked at that don't match.
So Bernie.
And you and I talked about it briefly.
Yeah, so Bernie, I get what you're saying, for me, I've done a lot of research on these, what are called small box stores, like Dollar General and whatnot. They actually make food desert situations worse in communities. Their employment patterns are horrific. The way that they treat people who work for them is horrible. And the fact that it's not really designed to deal with the food problem, it's a retail establishment that will carry food, but who's gonna carry whatever else they're gonna carry out of their huge list of PDF file that they couldn't, narrow it down and give us a sense of what they would plan on carrying. It's really a convenience store that has more food than most
Well,
convenience stores.
again, and if I
And,
can, just to
Yeah.
make sure I'm on track with you,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
My only point is that I don't care if it's Dollar General or whatever it
Yeah.
was. Because it is looking at the area. I don't know that the comprehensive plan, staff did a good job pointing out what the comprehensive plan said.
Yeah.
But what the comprehensive plan says doesn't match what's there.
But you don't need a comp plan if you have a UDO. And my point was that
Okay.
we would have, if it had been a grocery outlet, if it had been even a small Walmart, or if it had been a Blooming Foods or something like that, we probably would have approved it, despite it not being a comp plan. But I just feel like if we go back and keep trying to fix the comp plan, we're gonna spend more time doing that than actually just getting the new thing done. And that's my worry. I mean, I get your frustration and I hear that.
Well,
because I
no,
think-
don't.
I
take
think
it
a
as
lot of, no,
frustration.
and I think a lot of things are true about that, because if it's true that the city is no longer going to extend sewer to residents outside, new residential units outside the city limits, then we're gonna have to redo everything, because that's gonna change our footprint in terms of density.
Yeah.
Fine, but we need to know that.
Going back to, not to put it was just an example of the recent.
Oh, sure,
I can-
sure.
Because again, it's more of a focus for me that when I go down the 69 corridor,
Mhm.
and I see
Yeah.
retail and business uses left and right,
Yeah.
and then we don't allow something that could be similar because of what the comprehensive plan says, doesn't match land
Yeah.
use. To me, that's.
It's
a
like
little
Learner's
bit-
Way was that way.
It's a, Rolls Royce another
Yeah.
great example that we did permit.
Right.
So it doesn't seem consistent.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm wondering if we don't have the ability to at least chat with the consultant and see if maybe they've got some experience in even maybe helping out with some of the language that we put in as staff reviews these things.
So you're not suggesting that we go back and try to fix the comp plan?
Not the whole comp
What
plan.
you're,
I-
okay, I guess,
I'm asking, Julie, I'm
yeah,
not.
no, and I'm hearing you, and I'm thinking through it. I guess the question is, because a UDO is based on a comp plan is the principles, the UDO is the new development, CDO is the new ordinance, and they base it on the comp plan, we're probably gonna be making changes
We'll have
from what the
to.
comp plan was,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we're open to do that, but your concern is with when petitions
My con-
are going through.
My concern is that we can catch it before petitions go through and say, hey, this area of the comp plan says A, but what we actually see is B.
Uh-huh,
Is there a bridge between those two that we can get to before?
uh-huh.
And I don't want, because I don't think staff has the time to
No,
go through
No.
and keep cleaning the same fish. I mean, I
yeah,
really,
no,
really
I
don't.
get you. So is that something that we do? I'm getting you, I'm picking up what you put down there, I'm just thinking through how we can address it. Is that something we do as it goes through PRC? Is that something that we do when it goes to plan commission? Is that just,
We used to do those comprehensive plan amendments,
Yeah.
CPAs.
yeah,
I think for staff, we can really easily and quickly, and we have done this in the zoning map, we have a list of terminology that we've kind of made into a database where it says differs, we can do it like, this is what the use is there now, this is what the comp plan suggests, this is what we're zoning it as. And if that zoning doesn't conform to what's there now, we've got it listed and we could just like highlight all those and see if there are just sections of the county that need identification. I know Sample Road is one, but there might also be a few others where, the comp plan just doesn't jive with what's on the ground. And maybe that deserves a further look. We were planning on doing that during the map, the
Yeah.
zoning map for the CDO, but if you think it needs to be done ahead of the
I would just
CDO.
be curious what the consultant has seen. And again, not that staff isn't equipped to see those issues, but maybe if they can offer some guidance in
Mhm.
understanding how to handle those differences. Maybe it's some of the suggestions that Julie has. I don't know.
Okay.
I think there's some, that one resonates because it's recent and there's some stark distances, or there's some stark differences.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll start kind of boiling through some of these areas in my head and maybe see if I can't come up with some other areas that are similar. I mean,
if we do a zoning map first, though,
Before what Bernie's talking about, before the text.
before the text,
Well,
can't really do
Yeah.
that though, can you? You kind of have to do it at the same time.
unless you're not adding any zones, yeah, you'd have to, it
You
would
still
just
have to
create a
explain
lot
it.
of,
Never mind.
yeah.
I was gonna say, if we got the zoning map done quicker, then that would
mhm.
take care of some of that, but I don't see how we can do that without the text. I'm picking that up too. Okay. Just thinking out loud, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that we want to engage, so I want to engage the full plan commission to talk a little bit about what is a reasonable timeline, and then the work that we've done to date, and seeing if we can proceed to send that module 2 draft as is. We could start the consultants reviewing those edits. The next step is coming up with conditions for conditional uses. Yeah, it's really fun. And then we also need to start working on development standards, so that's landscaping and parking. And they've offered to do that. That doesn't really have to be in any module. It's standalone chapters, really, if you think about it.
Is that in their contract to do those things now? Or are you just looking at timing or? do you
I'm
need
looking
more
at
money?
timing.
Okay,
Yeah, I just would like to make sure that we're making adequate progress.
Yeah.
And I also want to engage the full plan commission with a possible timeline for getting some of those things done, because, you know, or setting up special meetings or what have you. We're just having trouble scheduling. Sometimes the admin meetings or the agendas are long, and we need to make a little bit more progress than I think we've been able to.
Yeah, and one of the things that I remember we did in the past is we limited the number of petitions.
Yeah.
On an agenda. In other words, first come, first serve, and
5 slots, 4 slots.
yeah,
Okay.
and then we prioritize, that way we're still prioritizing getting the CDO done.
Okay.
on the admin agenda.
Yeah,
Nothing technically, I mean, not everything that's on the ad, you don't have to go to the admin to go to the regular plan commission. So, I mean, we could,
and I think what we did last time was good because it was very fast.
Yeah.
You know, if anybody have questions on any of these, 4 items,
Yeah.
or here's what's changed.
Yeah.
And only covering what's changed.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
And I think going through the whole case is really,
a little too much.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
But I think, if everybody's read the packet, then you have very specific questions.
Right.
And yes, usually the questions I have are answered when the whole spiel gets presented at the admin meeting, but there's also a lot of other stuff like, yeah, I read that, yeah, I read that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it seems like it might be better just to focus on what's changed and
Okay.
questions and just run through them quickly.
Okay.
And then set time aside and say, we're gonna spend 1 hour on this or whatever.
Right. Okay.
And then if staff if they see things that don't need to be on the admin, is there a reason to see those? Is
I
that
don't
what I'm
think
hearing?
so. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking if it's a rezone to ag RR and it's a 50-acre lot, I don't think anybody's gonna have too much questions. I
And
mean,
there's still an opportunity for a second hearing.
yeah,
if
at the
it's
plan
necessary.
commission.
That's true.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
it,
Yeah.
Well, the
Because we
city
talked
does
about-
that consent agenda.
Oh,
Seems to move some of those.
I mean.
I know, but it, as
Yeah,
far as
yeah,
like,
moving stuff
being
forward.
efficient,
Yeah.
Okay.
moving things
Yeah.
that aren't
Yeah.
usually,
I think we could
controversial.
have maybe stuff, maybe we do administrative,
Sorry.
unfinished and new business. Maybe we could have a category or just a note that says like, no updates, no updates. And
Yeah.
then I think I don't think that's, I think we can accommodate
Now, by
that.
saying what I said, I, for 2 hearings, I don't know that would necessarily, if someone doesn't go to the administrative meeting.
They don't have to go to 2 hearings.
It doesn't mean
necessarily.
it's still, it would require 2 hearings.
Right, no,
It's up to
no,
the planning commission, I'm not
Yeah.
being a
Right.
proponent,
No,
Yeah.
but.
no.
Yeah.
Because then we have a game.
Yeah, yeah.
We're just
And then
kicking it
you're
around.
moving, at something that might have been talked about at admin
To
to
a
a
full
second
plan.
hearing
Right.
of the plan commission. And that would not save us time, but it would also save us time on the ones that we don't think have that happen. So-
So then what does staff need from the plan commission?
So
To
at
understand
this,
how to keep the CDO thing.
yeah, so since we missed the admin meeting this month, I was hoping to bring just a quick, like, maybe I could keep it to 30 minutes or less from the plan commission. Here are the updates that staff has made. Do you agree, disagree? And then I'd like to send to the consultants, and then here's also some ideas of how long each of these things that we have under module 2 will take. Do you agree, disagree? And then do you agree with us essentially morphing or moving on to module 3? And just start moving in that direction, because I think what we're just waiting on is like, and I think that the consultants might be better prepped, or maybe we could do it in another venue, is like, we need to look at the use table, look at the draft zoning map, look at the conditions of the conditional uses, and just pretend to use them. And we just need to like hone in on a property, pretend, and we can do a few of those, we can come up with a few examples and see how they work. But otherwise, we spend a lot of time on the uses, but we understand that you guys will only get a fraction of time that we.
Yeah,
probably
I mean,
should have.
in the past, we used to read through everything together and make changes together, and that
Yeah.
was fallacious. Because it's just hard getting 9 people to edit a document.
Yeah,
But I do think that if you run scenarios as planning staff.
Yeah.
And then bring the oddballs to us and say, you know,
Right.
this is where we found a problem,
right,
I think that would be a much better.
Cleaner
use of
way.
Planning
Okay.
commission time. It's something I think this group could do.
Yeah.
Is help work through some scenarios or whatever.
Okay.
If that would be useful.
Yeah.
Rather than the entire plan commission, doing it, but,
right,
you know, it just, yeah, whatever you need from us, I think I think whatever you need to establish as a schedule, I think you should establish it and you stick with it.
yeah. Just keep proceeding, okay.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
just
we need
trying
to keep moving. We need to get this done.
I know,
And by the way, I'm just hearing so many complaints about the UDO. Sorry, I kept calling it UDO, but I'm
Yeah.
hearing so many complaints about the UDO. In terms of the things that are happening and, I
right,
mean, you look at all the student apartments and everything else, it's just,
It's a stupid word.
it's just.
This
the
whole,
student apartments are-
Oh,
whole
student department.
the
Yeah.
whole student zoning thing and what happened out there at
Oh,
Kmart, they almost had a hotel there,
yeah,
and then they changed the zone and, oh, there it
Yeah,
goes.
and it's not, it
And
is
that's so
not,
close to the new regional hospital, a hotel would have been probably
It would've
really
made
well, you know.
Yeah.
utilized
well, they
there.
call it
Yeah.
multifamily because they can't call it student,
Yeah.
but that's what it is, it's
It-
student,
it
and the
may-
bedrooms are rented separately, and,
Who's
nobody else can
developing that?
afford it.
You know?
I think it was Trinitas, but that was the first go around. I think maybe someone else came in
I thought
afterwards.
somebody, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's that one on 446 and Third that's still coming, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like the downtown's changed in a negative way, and it looks like a dorm city and, you know, student apartmentville, and it's really hurt the downtown in a big way. And I don't know. I don't know how they let that happen, but it's all part of the UDO, and
Yeah.
it's like, God, you know.
I think a big picture would be helpful from the ORC plan commission, all the boards, all the committees, just to say, these are the things that we really want to incentivize and raise up in the ordinance. These are the things that we want to disincentivize or see less of, and then we can work with that. I think it
Can-
just makes
can
it
we-
easier to
can
say it
we
out loud.
set time aside at each committee meeting to go through those things and
Sure.
talk about those things, just sort of open air.
Mhm.
Here's what I love, here's what I hate.
Yeah, would you do that at all the committee meetings, plat committee, ORC, PRC, just
Why
sort of
not?
feedback of
A
like,
lot of data.
That's
Yeah.
okay. That's okay.
feedback from the committees maybe on what specifically that they've seen, what do you think has been problematic?
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
not
we could
saying data's
target
bad, but
that.
You gotta manage a lot of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of it's gonna be overlapping.
Well,
Yeah,
that's a good point.
I think a lot of it's gonna be pretty similar.
yeah, okay. All
Which
right,
would be
that's
good.
all I've
And,
got.
you know, and even if it's just, you know, send an email or whatever, doesn't
Yeah.
mean they have to take meeting time to do it.
Yeah. All right,
Awesome.
all right,
I think
thank
some
you,
of this is
everyone.
gonna move faster than-
We'll go ahead
It
and
sounds
adjourn.
like a good path forward.